was never before, and it will never be again, because it's not a song, it's a moment. And I've always been so passionate about it because it has this immediacy, right? And if you're there witnessing it, you're winning. And if you weren't there, well, you're hearing it, and you could hear like a remnant of it. But that risk that they took, I mean, there's sometimes the jams would fall on their face, but other times they're transcendent, and you're like, I'm alive, just being in this exchange of music to audience and audience to music. It becomes one.
People have so much fun, and they kind of circle this weekend on their calendar and look forward to it all year. Having like the gem and crystal community kind of intertwined with the music is something that's really cool and unique as well. Because they really go hand in hand in a lot of different elements. People aren't really getting that kind of experience anywhere else. So they know, okay, Gem and Gem's coming up. I'm super stoked.
Hello, everyone. Here we are today with Mr. Dave Weissman. So Dave and his company Musical Earth have done PR and marketing for bands like Greensky Bluegrass, Star Orchestra, was involved in Everyone Orchestra, Sweetwater 420 Festival, Acoustic Hookah, so much more. Dave, man, so glad to have you here. First of all, how you doing this evening?
Good, Cam. Thanks for having me.
Dave, you've been at this since even before social media, and as everything's changed, certain principles of how to market yourself change, but some things stay the same. And I'm curious with you, so here we are in 2022. What kind of advice might you give an artist on the rise, still growing their fan base, so that they don't plateau and that they can really continue to grow?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, listen, I think you're at the forefront of what's happening right now, and thanks again for having me on your podcast. I've mad respect for all you've been doing with this and all the people you've talked to. And a lot of them have played our events over the years, from 420 to All Good Festival to Jubilee to all the hookahvilles that go back. I mean, I've been at this literally, the correct number is about 25 years, right? And so, I think for any upcoming band, you've got to distill, what's the top of the mountain point of what you're about, right? Like what is that? Like, is it your concert? Probably it could be your recordings. I mean, some bands are better on recordings than they are, in concert. And so it really depends upon the artist, and making that, your moment, like your needle on the record, right? I've heard so much incredible music from whether I've worked with the artist or not. And people that tend to be successful really just know what they're about and project that.
Talk to me more deeply when an artist who they found their thing, they know what's at the heart of what they want to be as an artist, but maybe they're struggling just like getting found. And not only found by people who are promoters and people putting on events, but also found by fans. Like what advice might you share regarding that?
I mean, listen, I think it's very dependent geographically. A band coming up out of, New York, New Jersey area probably might have it harder than, say, a band in the Midwest, right? I mean, it really is a very regional thing, and I've seen this regionality play out because people kind of get stuck in by their region. A lot of West Coast bands have a hard time making it past the Rockies. A lot of Midwest bands might have a hard time making it out West. And so, I think, like staying true to yourself as an artist, which sometimes is a challenging thing. I mean, we've seen it from the bands that have been at it for 20, 30 years, guzzling their delicious, beverage of jam or whatever it might be. I mean, we're talking, it's really segmented, like Greensky Bluegrass had found their fan base because they really took bluegrass on it. They turned it on its edge. I mean, they've followed like their forefathers before them, like the Leftover and the Cheese, and they green skied the bluegrass. You know what I mean? And each band has to have their thing that speaks to their audience. I can't say what it is that hits. I discovered just recently an artist that is apparently super Aurora. Okay, this amazing pop some Scandinavian, origin, Bjork kind of artist. Okay, check her out. And I just was, someone suggested I check her out, and she's killing it. Tens of millions of listeners on Spotify, has all these new releases and just an incredible music because she stayed true to herself. I saw some, what do you call it? The Tiny Desk with her almost like 9 or 10 years ago. She was like a teenager. And now it's, she's a global pop star, And so I don't think she compromised, her art and what she was about. I can't say it's for everyone by any means. It may not be for you, but a couple of her songs had some really cool hooks, and, it's not typical jam bands or anything. I mean, that's definitely where I've populated, in terms of the world of commerce over the years, because it's my passion, but by no means is that the end all,
I'm curious to hear you talk about what promo was like before social media,
right?
And just like,
what do you think it was like?
You got a megaphone riding your horse and buggy around the town you're about to go to next. You
print out flyers and you would put them in an envelope and you would ship them to people who promised they would put them up. And one time I remember I sent flyers to a cat for Akustakuka early in my career. It's like the late 90s. I sent flyers for a show and thinking, hey, we got a street team, or it's great. We got people putting the word out for our show. It's going to be awesome. He said he'd flyer the whole town. So we went to the show, and the show was fine. It wasn't amazing, but it did okay. And then we were like back, I think, at his house after the show, and I saw all these flyers like in the trash. No kidding. And I was like, is this how it's supposed to go? Like people just say they're going to do what they're going to do. And it's just tricky. What do? You got to take people at their word, And so it was a lot of that. It was like, yeah, get on the guest list and, put out some flyers. So there was a lot of flyering. You would talk to record stores. You make sure the record store would have a flyer in the window. I mean, where else would you reach music people? They didn't have a communal space. There was no cell phones. There was no way to centralize, just feed the data like you can with, Facebook ads. You can play your video for tens of thousands of people who've never heard it for a couple $100. What a cool opportunity. I mean, you would never be able to do that in the 90s. You know what I mean? Like, and so seeing how it's evolved is a kind of a cool development.
Do you feel like it's easier for a band to kind of break out now, even though it's just so much noisier? There's so much competition, like, on a given social media feed. It's so hard to even break through that. Like some people would say it might be even, while, it's more accessible to be a hit now, it's even more difficult. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, the ease of access is one thing, but standing out in that noise is a challenge, right? That's not going anywhere. That's not going to get any easier, because I feel there was a great quote I heard Jim James talk about how there's so many different avenues for a certain artist to hit. Like you could just be good on TikTok, but might not be on these other platforms, and it's just like it's so hard, because how do you create something genuine that that grows from the ground up and has a foundation? You could come out and be have some meme or a TikTok that blows up, but how do you sustain it? There's millions of TikTokers. I mean, probably billions. I mean, maybe not billions, but many people are on that platform. And so there, I wouldn't say it's any easier. I certainly think that it's definitely, it's more accessible. You could put your music out there with less friction and make your art available, whether it's NFTs or video. You could license your music for video games or put it on Spotify for a couple $100. I mean, it's there, but yeah, it's in the middle of a garden of millions of different flowers, It's definitely challenging.
Hi, I'm Katie, producer of Weird Music Podcast. I want to give a big shout out to Voodoo Ranger. Live dangerously.
Well, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. Just want to let y'all know we've got these hand-dyed, ice-dyed Weird Music Podcast hoodies and also tees. If you'd like one, let us know. We'd love to get you one. Also want to give a big shout out to Voodoo Ranger from New Belgium Brewing for sponsoring this podcast. And a big thank you to the geniuses over at Thrax CBD for sponsoring us with their amazing products. Also want to give a big thank you to J&J Distribution, Ohio's premier Delta 8 and CBD wholesale supplier. Retailers, check out their brands Cloud 8, Compassionate Buds, and Zaza. Also a big thank you to our local print shop, Franklinton Press. Definitely hit them up for any of your custom merch or custom printing needs. They'll take good care of you. Got links in the description. And yeah, much love, y'all. Now back to the episode.
So as you have your, your music business hat on, I'm curious, like, you look out at the landscape of artists trying to break through, and we're rooting these guys on. Can you talk about something that you think might be overlooked by, the majority of artists out there?
Well, listen, I think every band is different on what they're willing to do, right? And I've mentioned to you, I think risk is one of those things, and I found, to me, across my 20 plus years, there has been a group that has always been at the forefront of that. Like it's the part and parcel, the nucleus of it all is taking an improvisational risk, is the Everyone Orchestra. To me, that the ability to harness that moment where it was never before, and it will never be again, because it's not a song, it's a moment. It is like this unique blend of chemistry of artists, and there's been hundreds. Literally, we were talking, it's been 20 years since we started planning some of the first Everyone Orchestra shows outside of the origin out in Oregon. And so the first shows out of there was in Ohio and Cincinnati in 2003. Okay, it's coming up on 20 years. And I've always been so passionate about it because it has this immediacy, right? And if you're there witnessing it, you're winning. And if you weren't there, well, you're hearing it, and you could hear like a remnant of it. But that risk that they took, there's sometimes the jams would fall on their face, but other times they're transcendent, and you're like, I'm alive, just being in this exchange of music to audience and audience to music, it becomes one. And I think you can't really construct a band how to do that, but the bands that do that have that connection to their audience and to their music is really powerful. And the EO is so unique because each time it's different. So people don't know what they're going to get, and that's part of the risk. It's why it's a challenging on the camera side, I think, too. That's why it's a great band to see at a festival, because you're already there and you're like, holy crap, look at all these artists playing together. You have people from the Humphreys to Fruition to John Cleary to all these people playing together in an Everyone Orchestra, Anders Osborne and Anders Beck, and it just becomes this Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction. You would never see these people on the street together, much less on the stage cohesively elevating, the experience. And I don't know how bands do that. I think bands have their own skill. And yeah, cutting it in this day and age it's not an easy thing.
Amen, though. Like, what is cooler than that improvisational fucking mountaintop, you had to be there kind of thing? That's, we live and breathe this kind of thing. Yeah, and I love that answer. I've asked this question before on this podcast. That might be my favorite answer to that question.
Well, it's true, because you've spoken to Matt, you've had him on the pod. Again, we've been in the trenches together for 20 years, and just seeing some of the stuff that has happened in the moment, and he's so willing. He becomes this vessel of like possibility. And to me, I honestly, and I've described this for a lot of things, is that to me, that's like the top of the mountain of what I see in this community, in the jam community for which we populate, right? The weird music and the festival going people. Matt's offering, I think it's just really just the tip is the top descriptor of what we're all seeking, whether you go to see Fish or Dead and Company, or when we saw the Dead, right? We would go for those moments where Jerry would wail, or Trey would take a song 40 minutes, or anything that it just blows your expectations. And the thing about Everyone Orchestra is, you get there, there's 90 minutes of we have no idea what's happening. They probably do, because there's a whole bunch of talent, And it's kind of like that fusion operation that just went on. Is they going to point their laser at the moment, heat it up real hot, and get some crazy shit going, you know?
Dave, you're a seasoned vet. You know, you've been working at this, you say 25 years. And man, I'm curious. People you've worked with, can you talk to me about some of the intangible qualities that you just admire and appreciate the most from people you're, on a team with you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's run the gamut, right? It's like, first of all, oh, well, what's the purpose? Why are you doing the work, right? It's for some greater good. It's, certainly everybody's in business to do business and make money, but I think, when you're presenting events, it has a little bit of a higher calling, and a lot of people, might go to shows and may have a good or bad experience, and then they can say how good it was or say how bad it was, but may not know the underworkings of the roots behind it. Like you might see the flower in the tree and see how beautiful it is, but you might not know what is the foundation to it. And a lot of the foundation is months and months of calls and emails and conferences. And, I really appreciate when people like, what I call is like close the circuit, like if there's a task or a project that you actually can like finish what you say you're going to do. You know what I mean? And this is across all walks of life and business, but especially in events, right? Because there's a ticking clock to the event, and if you get it all done in time, it usually comes off well. And or if it's stressful, then there might be some people taking on a little bit of extra weight or something. And so, I think the qualities that I appreciate is people that communicate well. I think that's the lifeblood, of almost any business, especially with music. You want to know what makes an artist feel comfortable, and what makes their fans come out. And I think that would be the thing. It's communication.
And I also want to maybe I'd like to turn this introspectively, if we will, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So we're all on this path to kind of be as good a version of ourselves as we can be. I'm curious to hear, as you think back to how you've grown as a person, to how you've grown just in the different avenues of your life, whether that's as a father, as a coworker, as an entrepreneur, whatever that is. I'm curious, what stands out to you along your path as the specific lessons you've learned, steps you've, taken to grow in specific areas that you feel have been most impactful to you actually kind of growing and leveling up?
That's a great question. That's a lot of layers there. I mean, listen, it's, everybody's journey is their own, right? I mean, you start somewhere and you don't really know where you're going to end up. Some people do business plans, some people have life plans, or, coaches. I encourage all of that. I think for me, that one of the things that I kind of can lean on and appreciate and value, I stop short of say recommend, but what's worked for me, it might sound, well, it's going to be what it is, meditation. Okay. Like I've been doing transcendental meditation for about 16 years, and that's helped really just keep the ship steady, and gives you a perspective a little bit rather than get so caught up in the moment, the success or the failure, the profit or the loss, because events are basically a gamble, and a lot of people don't give enough credit to people who are putting them on, the promoters who take all the risk, right? Like the way musicians and everyone orchestra take the risk, there's promoters who are putting their money and their lives and they're on the line. And so I stop short of that too. I don't have that capability, but is finding some center in all of it. And you have to be able to draw from a place that is genuine. And it's a different road for everybody. Some people want to escape as they're genuine, other people dive into their work 80, 100 hours a week as they're genuine. I'm not here to tell anybody what their genuine is at all. We can't, but I think finding, your own, and for me, it's been, meditation's helped.
It's interesting, like jumping a little bit to the side, being genuine is adjacent to being authentic, and that's like a loaded word, being authentic. And it's like, if you're talking like as an artist, being original, being genuine, being authentic, like these things. The reason I ask is like, I'm curious if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, of course I want to be genuine, duh. It's like, what if I feel ingenuine one day? Like, what do I, like, how do I become more genuine? Like, it's one thing to say that it's good to be genuine, but it's another thing to like tap into that. What have you learned about actually being genuine?
Learned. I mean, listen, everybody has their off days, man. Like it's not, nobody's 100%. I guess when I say like being genuine, it's like what are you about? Like, what are you putting out there in the world? Are you kind? Do you close the circuit with people? Do you communicate well? Do you play well in the sandbox with others? Because I mean, I've worked with people from coast to coast for year after year after year after year, many of them for many of those years in a row. And so I feel like, people are willing to, operate on a level that you're able to get stuff done. And also you can sort of elevate that. Like if you could, what's expected of you, then like, what can you do to go a little bit further? You know what I mean? It's like, sure that you could communicate with people and finish an email or, finish a text thread or get some task accomplished, but can you do more? And that's one of the things that in music, it's been really hard because there's so much to do, like I, early in my career, I had a hard time of knowing when to call it quits and to leave the office. Like you could, it's been an 8-hour day, but we have 6 hours more of things to do. And early on, I would probably stay there for 6 more hours and work 12-hour days, but not anymore. It's like finding that's what I mean about being authentic. It's different for everyone. Same with the artists and what they're willing to put on the stage. Like, because artists, they make the music, they practice the music, they execute it, and they perform, they tear down and do all the things that you got to do. But then they got to get up and hit the socials and hit, it's a lot. Like it's a grind, and some people aren't willing to do it. Fair enough, and some are, and there's no right answer of what, thing is going to unlock the next step. I've seen some bands that are playing with their heroes, filling arenas now, that have, done really good things. But other bands work just as hard and haven't had that success, and so there's not a single one thing. But I feel like if you're getting in it for the right reasons, because you like it, because it's your passion, that's where it's at.
Dave Weissman is where it's at. Dave, man, Musical Earth, represent. Dave, so glad to have you here. Yeah. Fucking love you, man. Everyone out there listening, if you need a house, if you need a publicist, Dave's a realtor. He's got all the tricks when it comes to marketing your music festival, marketing as an artist, marketing your tour. Get a hold of this guy. Dave, man, so glad to have you here. Starting to wrap up, yeah. I just got one or two more questions for you.
Yeah.
How would you describe what you would consider as the optimal leadership style?
I mean, listen, they're the people steering the ship, right? Like if you have a captain that's whatever you're trying to do, there's an objective, right? Whether it's a band or a festival, the band reach more people, play the music, keep clawing at the profit mountain. I mean, when we get down to a business, it's a profit enterprise. We're all capitalists, right? And so if you could distill it to that, the leadership style is the person steering the ship. They need to know the rudder and the sails and where the ship should go. Where are we attempting to be? And to have a plan for that. So some captains, some leaderships, kind of are in the back just chilling and watching it go because there just happens to be enough wind at the sails. I'm using a lot of metaphors because this is how I operate, but that's a pretty good question. I mean,
that's a pretty good metaphor.
Well, I mean, I'm full of them, seriously, but I mean, I've worked with many managers or event promoters, they have a lot on their plate, and I've always just tried to stay in my lane, and I think delegation is really important. I don't know if there's any one style. I certainly don't like authoritarian, That's not fun to get in every day and be told what to do. Or I've worked with people that berated me, for different things, and those didn't last long. I think every project has a different objectives, and as long as they're focused on it and can bring the proper team along, right? Like the people you work with, right? You have a great team, and they're driving you and they're inspiring you, and you're happy and you're driven. Everybody's winning. That's what it looks like. At least what I see, what you're up to. But not a lot of not everybody has a experience in that. They just get the helm and they're like, what do I do with this? And a lot of people just figure it out as they go.
I got a last question to wrap this up.
Yeah.
If young teenage Dave could see this wild ride you've been on, and what was in store, and could say, what's up to you now? What do you think you might say to yourself now?
I told you so. I mean, seriously, because this is funny that you say that. And I've used this even before I was in the industry, like at the dawn of me. I'm 18 years old. I'm a freshman at Indiana University. And me and my buddies were just, long hair hippies, deadheads, fish heads. And we went down to the little college radio station and asked if we could have a radio show. We're like, we could play our bootleg tapes. And they're like, how's Sunday night sound? So for every Sunday night, all 4 years of college, we had a radio show. And it's my motto to this day, is all for the asking. And I never stopped. We got it because we literally thought that we might be able to. So we asked for it, we got it, and it changed my life. It's introduced me to the people that started my career, from meeting the publicists to all these bands, and we were interviewing, just like you, we were interviewing Sonny from Widespread Panic in like 1996, and all these different artists, Leftover Salmon, Acoustic Hookah, all the jam bands that were jam bands before the word jam band was even really a word. We would have them all because we had enough courage to go and like push ourselves to just ask for what we wanted. So I'm not that surprised I'm where I'm at. It's kind of intentional, so
I love that. Told
yeah.
you so. That's awesome. Fucking Dave Weissman, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that you do.
Yes.
Thank you for all you've done for me.
Yeah.
You're the man, Dave. We're all lucky to have you. And thanks for joining us here, man.
I appreciate it, Cam. Keep up the great work, sir. We'll see you soon.
So here we are with Josh Pollack. Josh, man, so glad to have you here. How are you doing today?
Doing excellently, thanks. I'm enjoying this rainy weather that we have up in Portland, Oregon.
So for everyone out there listening, Josh here, he has a deep background in festivals, putting on shows. He's one of the main people behind Gem and Jam Festival, which is coming up February 3rd to February 5th in Tucson, Arizona. Everyone out there, we've got links in the description to check all that out. But Josh, to start this off, I think it'd be really cool to talk about, from your perspective, like what you think are some of the most important sticking points just when it comes to throwing events, and really what gives them like a wow factor.
It's a good question. Really taking the fan experience into account and having that really be first and foremost and kind of like the paramount kind of factor when making certain decisions. And doing things that are different and unique. I think that nowadays there's a lot of very similar style events, whether musically or just aesthetically. So doing things that are different, which I think can also lend itself to, kind of an increased appreciation from the fans, and knowing that, oh, this is something different, this is something unique. I can really appreciate this, and it's not really like a kind of like a cookie cutter kind of thing. That's kind of where I've experienced a lot of success throughout my career in doing events, is really focusing on some of these creative elements that really not a lot of events will really put a lot of focus and energy into. So some of those other things just beyond the music are really important in terms of like differentiation. If that's something that you're trying to go for, that's definitely something that we play up on for Gem and Jam.
You have a background in other like smaller shows as well, is that correct?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I started off as just like an independent promoter doing shows in Colorado, and kind of got my start doing after parties for the band STS9, Soundtrack Sector 9. That was kind of my introduction to the music industry. And from Colorado, I moved to San Francisco. So I was doing a lot of events in the Bay Area for many years, and actually just relocated up to Portland, Oregon. And I've been doing the booking for a new venue up here called the Get Down, which has been super exciting, and I'm really enjoying my role there. But yeah, I get to really also work on Gem and Jam and some other kind of like one-off events that I do outside of Portland during the year.
So approaching Gem and Jam, where you have a super unique thing, and then a venue where you have a calendar that you have to fill, and you also want to have a wow factor with all the events throughout the calendar. But can you talk to me a little bit about how those are unique challenges and how you go about bringing that differentiation, that making each night special at a club versus Gem and Jam?
Totally. Yeah, I think at like the club venue level, just being able to, obviously you have like more parameters and structure in terms of like the specific timing of the show, and not as much space. So you really have to kind of like pack it in. So really just like, yeah, again, being diverse with the musical offerings. And what we try to do is really not be pigeonholed into one specific genre, and really try to bring in a lot of different types of demographics of people, different people who like different styles and different types of events. We also do like comedy, we do drag shows, we do private events. So try to keep it pretty diverse. And then in terms of like the festival, obviously, a lot more space, multiple stages, it's camping. So there's just like around the clock programming. So we can really fit a lot of content and a lot of experiential items into that schedule, and really just provide something for everyone is kind of what we really strive for. And if you're not into a jam band that's playing on the main stage, then there'll be maybe some bass music going on another stage, or there'll be something like funkier, or there's multiple workshops going on, there is a healing zone, different vendors. So just try to have that almost like sensory overload experience at the festival level, which isn't as easy to do in like a venue format, but really trying to take different elements of like that festival experience and bring it to the venue, whether it's like just some added production, or having some live painters, or sometimes space permitting art gallery kind of thing. So really just trying to integrate those creative elements is super important to me.
I love how you started this off with, it all starts with looking through the fan experience. And I'm curious, beyond that though, what kind of advice could you share with any artists out there putting on their own events, their own festivals, or any up and coming promoters about just like the most important sticking points when it comes to putting on events?
I'd say really like don't be afraid to take risks, but there's obviously like a caveat there, because when you're like talking about like safety, obviously you don't want to be taking risks in that regard. But yeah, like I was saying beforehand, like trying not to do things the way that other people do them. And if you're going to an event, you can, take notes, be like, oh, I would not have this way. I would do it that way. And if you're doing your own event, then you actually have the platform to like make those changes and do the things that you think are lacking in other events. So that would probably be like my main piece of advice, is just like, don't be afraid to do your own thing and kind of dance to the beat of your own drum.
Can you talk to me about what you've learned about how to have a venue or event or a festival have like a community around it, like an actual kind of like fan base.
Yeah. I mean, the fan base for Gem and Jam has definitely grown a lot over the past years. I've been super thankful for that. And yeah, it again like comes down to like people have so much fun and they kind of circle this weekend on their calendar and look forward to it all year, with some of those unique elements where people aren't really getting that kind of experience anywhere else. So they know, okay, Gem and Jam's coming up. I'm super stoked. Like either I went last year or years before and I know what to experience, or like my friends have told me that they had so much fun and they can't wait to bring me, kind of thing. So yeah, and really having like the Gem and Crystal community kind of intertwined with the music is something that's really cool and unique as well, because they really go hand in hand in a lot of different elements. There's so much crossover, and just like having that kind of energy is really cool, and it's really something that I haven't seen any other event do, like aside from an actual mineral gem show. Like there's usually either that or there's a music festival. So like that coinciding and really like bridging those two worlds has been really cool. So there's a lot of people who are really into the gem community who are also into the music scene and into the type of artists and music that we bring. And it's just like this super cool, concentric kind of experience between those two worlds.
So for everyone who may not know, what is like the itinerary of Gem and Jam? Like, can you kind of explain it for someone who may be just hearing of this for the first time?
Sure. So there's between 3 and 4 stages of music. So you arrive a day early. We offer like early entry for people to come in and kind of get like the most prime parking camping spots that are closest to the festival grounds. And music starts at noon every day. We kind of like to stagger it up. So we'll start with one stage for a couple hours, and then we'll add another stage and another stage as it gets further and further into the evening. And then there's also workshops going on during the day. So we definitely have a pretty robust offering of different workshops that people can attend once they are on the festival grounds. There's a whole healing village where you can get body work done. There's tea service. There's again some kind of like class kind of like oriented experiences there where you can go and sit in on someone speaking or someone giving it's kind of like a lecture. So try to have like workshops and also like healing zone. So it's 2 separate choices that people can kind of go to during the day. That's not really like music oriented, but also having music going on. Have 30 to 35 like craft vendors every year. So we have a whole like vendor bazaar marketplace that opens up right as the gates open. Really unique array of live painters. Really go heavy on the art. So there's art galleries, there's live painters, there's big murals, there's art installations. So everything that we set up is kind of meant to be like explored and is all kind of like interactive. And it's really all about just like going with an open mind, getting ready to be inspired and have a really good time. And that's kind of like the main itinerary, honestly. Like coming to a festival, want to have a really good time just with like an open mind. That's what I would recommend coming to an event for the first time, or as a return festival goer. Just try to maintain that open mind. And I know it's hard to do, but try to really, not, you have your certain expectations, but I think when you go in like setting the bar to a certain level, that can sometimes, lead to disappointment. So I like to try to have like an open mind and really like take in the full experience.
Jumping a little bit to the side here. So like you and your partners, you're running a festival, and you also mentioned the other roles you have. When it comes to just working with people in general, can you talk to me about some of the qualities you admire the most, that, you know, some of the most important qualities when it comes to professionally working in teams?
I think the ability to really communicate transparently and authentically is super important. Being able to like take responsibility for the things that you do, and being able to like own up to certain mistakes, or being able to take constructive criticism and always be willing to learn and always be willing to improve, like as a person or as a team member. That's what I really like appreciate. I've had my fair share of dealing with people who just kind of like put on this facade, and you know, I don't really appreciate that, and I don't think that really gets you to where you need to be, really in any industry, to be honest. So yeah, I think that just like the honesty, the transparency, the clear, and even like over communication. Like so many times something happens, maybe the ball got dropped, and just some like simple communication could have really like solved that problem. So I mean, that's something that I'm continuously working on as well. Definitely not perfect in that regard, but yeah, trying to just be like really communicative and open to collaboration.
I'm curious, like, what growth and improvement looks like for you these days.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think that it's, like I said, you know, continuously, working on better communication, and that like kind of like over communication versus under. So many times I think, you know, in our society, we've just been maybe like programmed to just do like these like very basic conversations with each other, and not really like get past that surface level. So yeah, I think we need that now more so than really, you know, we have before, like really like checking in on our friends and on our community, and making sure that we're there for folks if they should need someone to talk to, or just like hold space with them and be there for them. So yeah, that's something that I'm, you know, continuously working on as well. Try to stay in touch with friends and family more so like than I do. I think that, that's one of those things for me that's a little difficult, is like checking in with people on a consistent basis. So yeah, I'd like to see myself grow in that regard, like always working on better ways to communicate with friends, family, loved ones, coworkers, random strangers, all of the above.
Jumping back to the music side of things, like, so from where you sit as a promoter, as someone putting on a festival, what advice can you share for up and coming artists about finding success?
Yeah, that's another tough one. I would say if you're an up and coming artist, like you want to play your music for people no matter what. And that's going to take a lot of work, and that's going to mean you're not getting paid for a while. Like maybe you're even coming out of pocket to play your music for people, but all of that is going to come back to you if you can kind of stay focused and put yourself in these situations that are going to set yourself up for success. So many times I've seen, you know, artists that are trying to break into the scene and they want to get booked, but they're not willing to, you know, have some really like establish themselves. Like you really need to like get your foot in the door somehow. And like, you really have to be open to really just starting from the ground level and like not have any sort of preconception like, oh, I need to get X, Y, and Z in order to play this show. Like, you want to get out there in front of people, you want to reach people, you want people to be stoked about your music and talk about you, and then come back to see you that next time, and really just like build organically that way. Super important, and not the easiest thing to do. Playing like the right events also, doing research and seeing who's putting together shows, or booking the artists that you aspire to and like reaching out to them. I think just coming from the promoter side of things, if somebody completely random hits me up, it's going to be hard for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna put you on without any sort of history, without any proof that you've played somewhere and people know who you are. So you really have to like start there and build that following and play in front of as many people as possible.
It's a long road.
It really is. It really is a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's not for the faint of heart, but you can do it.
And neither is throwing a festival.
Yeah. No, it really isn't. Not for the faint of heart, for sure. But yeah, total labor of love. And we've gotten to the point where just super grateful to be in the position that I'm in, and that the rest of my team along with me are in. We have kind of broken through, and people come to the festival now. So I'll give you like a little bit of backstory. So Gem and Gem actually started as a nightlife option for people who are coming to the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, which is one of the biggest gem and mineral shows in the world. But there was nothing to do other than go to the Gem Show. So that's how the festival was kind of born, was, okay, let's give everyone who's coming to the Gem Show something to do. So it's kind of like an after party for that. And eventually, after doing that a couple of years, the festival kind of grew out of a couple smaller different venues, and people just started coming to the festival just for the festival, aside from the Gem Show. So now it's kind of its own standalone thing, and we are like our own Gem Show within the festival. Like, with everything else that we do, we really focus on like the crystal and mineral vendors and art installations, and that being very much like a part of our brand. So definitely like super grateful that that people have resonated with what we've been doing, and we've been building like very slowly and organically, and trying to take little steps forward every year, not trying to go like too big and too crazy and change up too many things year after year. Just super grateful for the ability to do this and to continue to do it, and hopefully we'll be doing it for many years to come.
I love it. Awesome. Josh, man, starting to wrap up here. Got a final question for you. Can you talk to me about something that you stay away from doing that you think helps you, have peace of mind, but also like something that helps you be successful in your life?
Yeah, I'll kind of like go back to what I was saying earlier, was about, don't be afraid to like be different and do your own thing, and not necessarily need to like follow the path that others have kind of carved out behind them. And just being unique and being yourself, and not being afraid to kind of take risks, hopefully calculated. I think that, really that has been something that, super important to like day-to-day life, and within the context of, working in the industry as well. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. you stay away from following a path someone else set for you.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So Gem and Jam coming up February 3rd, Tucson, Arizona. String Cheese is going to be there. Emancipator, LS Dream, Aqueous. So many great acts. Josh, man, starting to wrap up. And for everyone out there listening, ticket link in the description. Check that out. So Josh, you're the man. This was awesome. Any final words for the people out there?
No, I just I really appreciate you taking the time. It's great to meet, and I hope you can make it down to the festival this year. And we'll have to connect offline and see what we could do to make that happen. So yeah, thanks again, and keep up the good work. Definitely keep doing what you're doing. And I'm stoked to be here, and we'll see y'all soon, hopefully.
Hell yeah. If you're out there drooling about Gem and Jam, go for it.